Hi there, and welcome to the next podcast, which is going to be looking at 1.2.1, which is your physical activity and your healthy mind and body. In today's session, we're just going to very quickly look at what's called somatotypes. Now, before we look at somatotypes, it's important to ask the question, why do sports people have different shapes and sizes for the different sports that they play? And I think it's illustrated in this picture of a rugby team here. You'll see that obviously all these are top rugby athletes, but a lot of them have very different body shapes and different body sizes. We're going to look at what the classifications for those body sizes are today, and we're also going to look at how their body shape will affect them in different sports. So the word somatotype, all that means is it's the classification of a certain body type. For your exam, you need to know the three main classifications of body types. The first one is endomorph, we have mesomorph and ectomorph. And we're going to look very in detail now at the different characteristics of these different body types. It's important that you remember these three words, and also you know the different characteristics of the different body types. So first of all, we're going to look at what's called an endomorph. And it's a typical picture of an endomorph. This is an individual who's got wide hips, narrow shoulders, and are characterised by fatness. So they have quite a high body count for fatness. If you try and imagine a triangle that is upside down for an endomorph. So we have wide hips and narrow shoulders. A mesomorph is characterised by muscularity, and as you can see in the picture, they have a lot of muscle mass. They are characterised with wide shoulders and narrow hips, and if you remember them as an upside down triangle with wide shoulders and narrow hips. And the final somatotype is what's known as an ectomorph, and they're characterised by thinness, and they have narrow shoulders and narrow hips. What we're going to look at now are how we classify the different body types, and you can do this with your own body too. We use a very simple method of calculating somatotypes, and this can be done probably by measuring your height and your weight, or maybe using calipers to work out your body weight. But we use it by this simple scoring method, and you may be asked a question about this in your exam. We score each of the different somatotypes with a rating from 1 to 7, 1 being low, 7 being high, and we use it with 3 different digits. So the first number is always between 1 and 7, and that relates to the characteristics of an endomorph. The second number is of a mesomorph, and the third number is of an ectomorph. So in the example given here, we can tell that this individual has a very low rating for endomorph, so they're not obviously going to have a lot of fatness on their body. They have a high mesomorph rating, which means they have a lot of muscle mass, and they have a low ectomorph rating, which means that they're not going to be really thin either. So with these 3 digits, we can work out what type of somatotype they are. And from this example here, we would say that they have low ratings for endomorph and ectomorph, but a very high rating for a mesomorph. This is a somatochart, and this just is how you record the different somatotypes using those 3 numbers. So as you can see, this dot here, that would be an extreme mesomorph. And you can see the number 171, they've got a high rating for mesomorph. In the bottom left-hand corner of this triangle, we have got the rating for endomorph, and you can see 711, meaning that they've got the high scoring for endomorph, and then 117, the high scoring for ectomorph. And what we can do with this is we can calculate the average somatotype for different sports. So if I just pick an example of a weightlifter, if you imagine a weightlifter, the typical body type, they would have very, very high characteristics for mesomorph because they have a lot of muscle mass to do their sport. A sumo wrestler would have some of the characteristics of a mesomorph and some of the characteristics of an endomorph, which would place them about here. So their number may be in the region of maybe 5, 5, and 1. And you can see all the different examples there. Pause this if you want to maybe read them. So why do we have these different somatotypes, and how do they alter your performance? You can use the different somatotypes, have different advantages in different sports. But put quite simply, generally, people who have an ectomorphic body type tend to have good muscular endurance, and we'll look at the different sports in a moment. People who have a high rating for mesomorph tend to have good muscular strength, and endomorphs tend to have lots of power. It's important that you're able to link those somatotypes to different components of health. So if you look at some of the sports as well, it's important for your exam that you can link these different somatotypes to different sports. An ectomorph would be linked to a marathon runner. If you think of maybe Mo Farah, who's got a very thin body type, he's an ectomorph, he's a marathon runner, good muscular endurance. We think of maybe our 100-metre sprinters, who tend to have a lot of muscle mass, or mesomorphs, similar to Usain Bolt. Mesomorph is related to 100-metre sprints, and our sumo wrestlers tend to be endomorphs too, and that obviously helps them grab more weight in order to push their opponent out of the ring. It's really important that you build up different sports for the different somatotypes, because you will be asked questions about that in your exam. So just to recap, we've looked at somatotypes, and that is the classification of different body types. There are three main body types: ectomorph, which is thin, narrow hips, narrow shoulders; mesomorph, which is muscular, which is wide shoulders, narrow hips; and endomorph, which is characterized by fatness, and they have wide hips and narrow shoulders. Remember to think of different examples of different sports for each of those somatotypes, and remember how you are able to calculate using the classification system those different body types. Please make notes on this, pause and rewind as you see fit to help you go back and maybe look at different parts of the presentation, and thank you.